as soon as this happened and as soon as we transitioned, it was really funny. Robin looked at me and she goes, "Look, I don't care what we have to do." And you talk about non-negotiables, prior to that, you probably had a list of non-negotiables. But when you go through that kind of an event, if you will, everything becomes negotiable.
Today, I'm bringing you an interview I had within my community of Freedom Founders. One of our members, Dr. Bill Jordan, an accomplished oral and maxillofacial surgeon, shares his experience in building a thriving practice to confronting a sudden and life-changing diagnosis that forced him to retire from surgery. Our conversation explores the emotional and financial challenges of unexpected career shifts, the importance of financial preparedness, and how to develop a resilient mindset and strategy to face life's uncertainties and economic realities. In this episode, expect to hear the steps that Dr. Jordan took to secure his financial future as quickly as he could, how Dr. Jordan and his wife Robin worked together to enact substantial changes, what it takes to proactively plan for your finances, how alternative investment strategies can stabilize your income, especially post-active income, how to build your long-term financial strategy, and much more. Please welcome Dr. Bill Jordan. Bill, I've been looking forward to kind of updating, your journey in your process of going from practice, a very viable practice, which we'll talk a little bit about here in a moment, but viable practice, your life, your journey with your bride, Robin. And then what we talk about a lot in Freedom Founders is kind of like, what's your next? Sometimes for some of us, myself included, that what's your next comes with a more of a hard stop and you better move on, pal, or do something. And other times there's a more of a transition process that people get to maybe take time. But setting the stage there for this conversation, let's go back a little bit and talk a little bit about your evolution in dentistry and the practice model that you enjoyed for many years.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dave. It's great to be here, and I'm happy to do that. I, was very, very fortunate to start my career as an oral and maxillofacial surgeon back in '97, and I was super blessed to be able to come out of residency and join a fantastic mentor of mine to this day, Dr. Jim Kennedy, right out of practice, and was very, very fortunate that I was able to live in the community and work in the community, which is something I always wanted to do, and was able to have a fully thriving practice. It kind of went through all stages. I came in as a young associate, not really knowing, which way is up or down, and had a great mentor, but was able to work with him. Actually bought into the practice, bought half the practice, then transitioned to buying him out. Then went through a transition where I actually merged with two other oral surgeons, and we created a larger group practice. And ultimately, was practiced with them for a number of years, and then transitioned. We actually sold to a practice management group, and was part of that for about 4 or 5 years, until I had to, I guess, fairly suddenly stop practicing. And so my entire practice career was really kind of seen in all aspects, from associate on into all those aspects. So I've been very, very blessed in that regard.
So you and your partners sold to a practice management group. That was obviously something that you all decided was a good move to take together. It requires a consent of the majority. So you did that, and then you progressed under that umbrella for several more years until 2 years ago in 2023 is when you came to that hard stop conclusion that because of some tremors in your hands, right, started to develop, that you just realized that you were not going to be able to continue on. And I guess I'd like to kind of go there if we could for a minute.
Sure.
When we're not prepared for something like that, and there are situations in life that we all face, whether it's family members or a friend or a person or something, things happen in life that we don't expect. I guess that's why we buy insurance, right? We buy a lot of to protect against the events we hope we never have to use the insurance for. What was, if you can describe like your emotions of when you realized that your time in the profession was coming to an end, and that wasn't your plan then. That was not, I don't believe that was, I don't know when you decided you might transition out, but I don't think you had it on your radar at that time, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I'll give you just a little backstory. I started probably about 6 or 8 months before I ultimately stopped practicing. I'd been dealing with some issues, some back pain, some neck pains, but I had a tremor or my hands were shaking more so than, I mean, I'd never had that before. And I was able to kind of manage it for a while, but typical either doctor or man or a combination of the both, just kind of, ignored it, didn't say anything to Robin, just kind of, well, I can manage. I don't know what's going on. It's fine. And then ultimately got to the point where I started doing some investigating. Went to a neurologist, neurosurgeon, orthopedic surgeon, started really kind of, you know, going to figure out what this was because it had gotten to the point that it had affected my ability to do certain procedures. And still the whole time never thought that I would stop practicing. I just figured, like anything else, I'm a fixer. I would just go, we'll fix it, we'll get it done, and we'll move on and get it taken care of. And I actually did have some surgery on my wrist and elbow, thinking that was kind of the plan. But I kept asking the whole time, what about this shaking? Oh, well, you know, one person said, oh, it's just associated with your cubital tunnel syndrome, more than you probably want to know. But leading up to all of that, going through all of the doctor's visits and ultimately surgery and everything else, and then realizing it wasn't working. And I went to go see a second neurologist. And because I honestly thought I had, something in my head. I thought I had a lesion or a tumor or something that was bad that, because I'd never had this before. My hands, like you said, those were my livelihood. I'd always had no problems with that. And then all of a sudden it was there. So when I went to go see her and she said, oh, you don't have any, there's no lesions in your head. You don't have any symptoms related to that. You just have a benign essential tremor. And I said, okay, phew, thank goodness. How do we fix it?
Yeah.
What do we do? And she's like, you don't. And I said, okay, when you say you don't, what does that mean? She said, well, we'll try you on medicine. We'll try this. We'll try that. And we'll just see if it works. And I just said, for me as a surgeon, I mean, I personally wouldn't want somebody operating on me if they had trouble keeping their hands still. And I was like, well, so I try the medicine, and if it doesn't work, we try other medicine. But what do I do? Do I keep operating and see if it works? I mean, I just didn't feel like that was a very, again, I wouldn't want somebody doing that to me. And so those were the times it was then that I thought, wow, this may be an issue. And I called a good buddy of mine who happened to be on the board of director for our malpractice insurance company because I didn't think I'd have coverage. I
Mm,
started thinking if I have this diagnosis, I may not have coverage. And he told me, he said, no, you have coverage. He said, you're just indefensible.
mm,
And so I was like, well, and he is also another mentor of mine. And he just said, Bill, we all reached that point in our practice where it's time to say, maybe I have to pivot. And so I sat down with Robin and I said, I think I'm done. And she's like, what do you mean you're done? What does done mean? And I said, I think I'm finished practicing. And it was although I'd been going through the tests and seeing all the doctors, it wasn't until that point in time when I was like, wow, my practice career is over. And it wasn't necessarily the way that I had anticipated because I hadn't even anticipated that at all. Um, and then it was just kind of a very sobering moment where I went in and had to tell my staff I'm done. I canceled surgeries. I said I'm not going to do it. I figured, well, you can't like dabble in it. You can't try a few things. You can't do this because I knew that it had already started to affect me. So I had to make that transition. And that was the point where I was relieved that I didn't have any other like brain issues or anything like that. And I knew enough about my own body to know that I couldn't do surgery anymore. So I was okay with that. But what do I do now? You know, yes, I had some disability insurance. Like you said, you hate to write those checks every year, hated it. But now I was like, wow, maybe um, this was the reason why. So, but going through that process in and of itself is a good 6 month long,
Mm.
process. And, they always say, well, do you have enough, you know, money somewhere that you could survive for a few months if you had to? Well, that's not ever going to happen
Right.
until it does.
Right.
And so I think that's the part that, you're like, okay, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do? And, I've had some opportunities where you could do some teaching and some other things, but still it was, a very sobering transition to know that what you had done your whole entire life, basically from college, you had this idea that I was going to go, and I wasn't planning on practicing or stopping practice anytime soon. People, you get to a certain age and people start asking the question, hey, how much longer are you going to practice? I don't know. I hadn't even thought about it. There's, I don't know. You want a number? I don't know, 65, 70. And I don't know.
Here's my special request of you, my avid and loyal and faithful listeners. Of the thousands of listeners I've had in 2024, less than 10% of you are subscribed to the podcast. That means 90% of you are listening to my podcast, and yet you're not subscribed. Why not? Well, it's just because you haven't taken the time to do it. I know I get busy to the same thing, and I fail to subscribe to the content that I like. So if you enjoyed or found my content helpful, clicking the subscribe or follow button right now will help the algorithms push my content to more people who can find it just as valuable. Plus, if you are a subscriber, you ensure you won't miss any of my content or updates as soon as they come out. I am personally excited about the upcoming guests, books, and projects that I'm working on, and sincerely don't want you to miss out on any of them. So hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more. Now, back to our conversation. As long as we enjoy it, I think a lot of us would be lost without something to do. So, maybe there's a transition, especially in a group practice where over time, as senior doctors want to cut down on time, and you can bring on juniors, and that's the opportunity in a group type practice. So you typically have that kind of transition where you could take your time to transition out. You spoke certainly about the emotional aspect of coming to the realization is, what I've been doing since I was very young is no longer going to be what I'm doing. That's a huge piece. And I'm glad you brought that out. I want to go now to what you talked about a little bit. The financial component. There's a short term. We always need to have some. I call it. I'm just using the word insurance, but it's not insurance. Gap insurance would be the margin. The liquidity we keep on hand, right? And so
Yeah.
it's that emergency fund. That's a better way to put it. It's not insurance. It's your own emergency fund. I think everybody understands there needs to be some of that to cover the gap. So maybe something does happen, or you have to wait for disability, or doggone it, we have a skiing accident, and stupid us, right? Trying to act like we're 16 and we break a wrist or something. So
Yeah.
short term we can manage those, but you're looking at now long term, and that's a different type of a mindset to wrap your head around. Like I said, the emotional, but now there's a financial component, because as long as we are able to keep doing what we do, which has been the blessing, providing for our family security, stability, you can live to fight another day, and you don't really think in terms of stopping because it's not put in front of us. The thing that I realized, early in my practice period is having more flexibility and having the ability to transition, whether it's a hard stop like you had to face, or even just over time, is figuring out, well, do we have enough replacement income? Certainly there's a emergency fund, but that's not long term. So beyond that, what have I done with my capital base, equity from the practice, and other investments I've made that can actually replace enough of my income to support the lifestyle that my family, you and your spouse, or whoever else is under the roof, wants to enjoy from all the hard work you did. And I think you and Robin, I know in our discussions previously, talked about that kind of moment where we have to use that B word, the budget, which a lot of times we don't use, right? Again, because we're not that we're
Right.
profligate spenders.
Yeah.
I know you guys aren't, and most people that we hang with aren't. But when you can make enough money, you don't have to think about it. Now it's like, well, we have to figure this thing out, right? So Talk a little bit about some of those conversations and how you've kind of you and Robin have modeled your mindset now on replacement income and being more focused on how to do that and be comfortable and not live in a scarcity mindset.
Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest aha moments. And I, my beautiful bride, Robin, I don't deserve her, but so over the years, we talk about, like you said, the B word, right? We'd sit down from time to time and say, hey, we probably should be, yes, you make enough money and you're doing okay, but let's be, let's think about this a little bit more. Let's be a little more proactive with this. And so we'd have little discussions here and there. But as soon as this happened and as soon as we transitioned, it was really funny. Robin looked at me and she goes, look, I don't care what we have to do. And you talk about non-negotiables, prior to that, you probably had a list of non-negotiables. But when you go through that kind of an event, if you will, everything becomes negotiable. And in her, she was like, look, I don't care. We'll sell the house, the cars, nothing matters at that point. Nothing matters, just that you're okay, that we can go forward. We'll do whatever we have to do. And that really just allowed us that opportunity to sit down and go, okay, now we need to, right? Before it was always something like, well, we should do this. It's something, yeah, we kind of want to do that. But then all of a sudden there's a need to do that. Then you have to do that and go, okay, let's look very hard at what we're spending. What do we want to spend? What do we not want to spend? And to go through that process in no, it's not an urgent thing, but it becomes an urgency because you're like, all right, well, now we have to really look at this because your income, your active income is done. And we weren't set up to try to do passive income. Like, oh, that's okay. We've got investments that are bringing in money, so we'll be okay with that. There was none of that. It was just the faucet turned off. And so then, you realize, okay, I got a little bucket of water over here, but now I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to look at how big of a cup I'm going to take each time. And do we really need that big of a cup taken out of water? Because you're not putting any more water back in that bucket.
Right.
And so that really where we sat down and started really going through everything that we were doing and really taking a hard look at those kind of issues going forward because it was like, okay, either I'm going to have to go back. I don't even know if any of these disability things will kick in. We may or may not, but I'm not going to do anything too quick because I want to see how, what we need to do. And so that was a very real moment where you both kind of looked at each other and said, all right, we have to do this. We just need to know, where, I always say, the checkbook register tells you where everything went. Your budget tells you where it should go, right? Just very, basic financial acuity 101 type of things. It's like, I don't really need to see where everything's gone, but let's start directing it where we want it to go.
Right. I think in terms of giving advice to other people, and this is not with regrets at all on your part, because I know where you and Robin are. I know you've landed this plane and have a good forward future. But let's just say we're talking to Bill and Robin Jordan, 20 years earlier, or
Hmm.
just like a younger colleague who you might be mentoring, in the same field. Um, Based on now what you've learned through your experience, what advice would you give that younger person when they are not facing, what you and Robin had to face, in a reality check situation?
Yeah, it is funny because there are a couple of surgeons that I've talked to. Just from my experience, it's something that it you think it can happen, but it's not really going to happen, but it does happen. And I think if I were to give some advice to people is to and it's really basic stuff like stay well within your means, live less than your means, because really get yourself set up so that you're not relying on that income as a source of income. From a financial standpoint, if I was to look at that, that's what I would tell them is that get a hold of your financial house first. Get down, set this up, really look at what you want to do because anticipate not having any income.
Yeah.
Anticipate that your income, anticipate that you may not be able to work or you might have to work less or whatever whatever may happen in life. Look at that, think of that as a real possibility, and then just get yourself and we're all, those of us that are dentists went to dental school, we learned how to become dentists. We learned how to do our profession. We didn't necessarily learn how to manage money, how to manage practice. We learned all those things through the school of hard knocks, just going through those, right? And if you had a good mentor. And so having that as your kind of basis, just good financial acuity, knowing where things are and understanding, this mindset. This is what I'm trying to tell my children going forward is going back to just basic things. Don't take your paycheck and then, spend it and then see what's left over.
Right.
Just simple things like, save first, put some away first, and make sure you've got income coming in that can ultimately replace or at least equal your active income.
We see this in all of our lives, and kind of going back to like a normal transition out of a business or a practice, the way most of us would like to do it, on our terms, right? We'd like to do it on our terms. And same thing with, as you said, living below your means. It's talk that we always have. It's in our heads, but we don't typically do it until we sort of have to, or we're getting ready to sell the practice, and maybe we're not forced to do it, but we're ready to do it, and then we find out all these things we should have been doing to, let's say, get the practice ready for sale. There's
Right.
elements you went through that with your group. We want to do this, but it's not like you call the broker and say, let's put it on the market. It's like, well, we got some. So the point I think we're both trying to make here is whether it's your own personal finances in your family or something you do for a business, even though you're not looking to exit, you need to start building the plan for the exit, or as you said, for not having income. If you do that early and have milestones to measure your progress, doesn't mean you're ready to pull the ripcord early unless you want to, or in case you have to. There's books I've read about business sale and transitions, and some people would say, "Well, I never want to sell my business. I want it's going to be legacy." Dentistry, you might have young people in your family coming up, and my younger daughter or son are going to join the practice. Okay, perfect. But still, even if you're not going to sell, you need to be building it as if you were going to sell it because, well, it just makes the model better while you have it, right? Same thing with personal finance. Well, I'm not looking to retire for 10, 15 years. Great. But if I start building my plan today so that if I wanted to retire, or be out of active income in 2 or 3 years, could I do that? Could I make that happen? Don't have to. If I have it done, then I've got really, I think, the best insurance we can have, irrespective of all the other insurance we buy. So I think coming back, full circle, what you and Robin, elucidated to me was a lot of this getting your hands wrapped around, financial acumen and how do you make your money, work for you. Number one, you said be disciplined. Agree 100%. Be disciplined. Don't live beyond your means. Now, take the discretionary savings that you pull off the table, and then it's like where you put it. And there's got to be an accumulation period of some kind. But then turning it around, as you said, you've got this bucket, but is the bucket producing now, or is it still trying to grow, or what's it trying to do? Give me a little bit of your insights, if you would, Bill, regarding what you and Robin have really taken from what you've become very conscious about doing, looking at your numbers, and then how you feel going forward with how your capital can work for you if you're more actively involved in how you invest it. Any insights there?
Yeah, I mean, so a little background. We were traditionally kind of the typical, hey, let's just maximize out our 401k. We're just putting money in and we're kind of doing this and giving it to a financial planner and having them manage that. And not even because I was so busy doing what I was trained to do, was to do surgery. I wasn't really thinking about, retirement. Retirement will come, it'll come. I just wasn't personally going, oh, I'm gonna do this to retire. I'm putting as much money away as I could, as I thought I was supposed to do. And then, I never knew, um, for instance, the world of alternative investing. You don't have to put your money in the stock market. You can, it's an option. That's what you want to do, but you don't have to. There's other ways that you can do that. And I was like, wait a minute, there's other things we can do. And so that's where I think the knowledge comes from. When I was just trying to, I was learning and reading as much as I could to figure out options, because I was wanting to go, okay, well, I want to get in this area of passive income. A good buddy of mine, I asked him one time, what does he do? And he goes, I manufacture mailbox money. And I was like, oh, well, that's good. I like mailbox money. I mean, as much as anybody else. So it was kind of that concept, like, what do you mean you manufacture mailbox money? What does that even mean? And so we had that discussion. And so understanding, number one, that that's even an option. Some people, I was, if you're anything like me, you're so involved in your practice and, your local, state, national society. I mean, I was very, very involved. So that was my whole life. And it was just like, okay, I hope I'm going to have enough to retire at the end, but I'm so busy right now, I can't even think of it. Can't even think about it. But then all of a sudden, when you're not busy, then you start thinking about it and you realize, okay, I need to do better. So going back to what I would tell my, 40-year-old self is that, hey, think about that. Don't just throw it and allow somebody else to do that. Learn and know that there's more to that. So that's where Robin and I really have kind of, dove into the education aspect. I need to learn more. I almost think of it as like going back into residency, or, the first time you ever had to do the surgery by yourself, or you had to do a procedure by yourself, or whatever it was. You learn how to do it, right? You were taught, you were shown, whatever, but there's a point in which you have to do it yourself. And so you learn and learn and learn, but then there's a point where you just say, okay, I have to do this. So I think developing a plan, just like you would with your finances, you have to do that with your investing, in my opinion. You have to say, okay, what am I trying to get out of it? What are the things that I need for our family, that we need? Are we going to look for income right now? Are we looking for growth? Whatever it may be, that helps you decide kind of what you want to do to create the end product you're looking for. So whether it's, you know, income right now, I need it, I need to start spitting it off and I need it now, or I don't need access to this money right now, but in 2 years I will, or whatever that may be. There's developing a plan. It's the same plan, just at maybe a different scale. Um, when I look at that, so I think developing that, just number one, knowing what's out there and what you can do. I I just, I mean, I don't know. I guess lucky. Fortunately, God's been in control of my life, and He probably kept me from doing as many of the stupid things as I probably did, or they weren't turned out to be not as stupid as
Right.
they probably should have been, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I dabbled in some real estate, more so not like, oh, I want to actively get in and use this as an income vehicle. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to go build a house for my kids in college, so that's got to be a smart thing, right? Because it's going to save me all this money. Well, not if you don't really think about it and you're not 100% sure what you're doing. So, oh, I want to go buy my mom a little condo because I'm going to use that as an investment, or whatever it may be. The little things you learned along the way is kind of like, oh, that was kind of stupid to do it that way. And so you learn from your life experiences as you go up, as you continue on in that regard as well.
Yeah, naturally, we have to learn. We don't explore, if we don't show our curiosity about things, then we don't grow at all. So I think you're right. We try different things and we learn from those experiences and hopefully get better clarity on really where we should focus. But your points are well made. Let's end on this. I know one of the things that you had told me recently is that one of my mentors and someone I share with our group is Dan Kennedy. And you mentioned something that Dan had said, and it I think it was well stated. Dan said that that defiance and action were the two attributes that one needed to take if one was going to be really more in charge of one's future in whatever regard. Um, you want to just talk a little bit about how that settled with you, defiance and action, and how you have put that into place, and how you regard that today as kind of a mantra that maybe you live by or want your kids, your children to also adopt?
Yeah, I think that for me, when the defiance aspect is kind of like, I think of it as kind of like standing up and going, okay, I am going to take control, and I'm going to not necessarily just allow someone to continue to dictate what I'm going to do, you know and so then the action part is to go, okay, well, if I'm going to do that, then I need to, number one, educate myself, and I need to learn, and then I need to go ahead and put things into action. I mean, not just sit there and go, well, I wonder if this is the right thing to do. And I think that they say that what's worse than the wrong decision is indecision, right? You sit there and you just like, oh, I don't know if I should do that. Is it the right thing? Well, you've got to do something at some point. you know, you've just got to test it and go. And so I think that's when I think of that as kind of being um, taking that step. Okay, maybe we don't understand the real estate markets. You don't understand what you're doing in the stock market. You may not understand what you're doing in gold or crypto or whatever. You're just doing it, right? Because that's what everybody else is doing. And so you got to stand up and say, look, I'm taking control. I'm not going to just allow to be I'm not going to be drugged by all the other people that are doing that just because they're doing it. Oh, well, if so and so is doing it, it must be okay because surely they've checked it out, right? No, it's like, no, don't do that. You know, don't be that way. Take control. It's your money. Who's going to fight over your money, right? You do that at the office. You do everything at the office. Like, this is my practice, my baby. This is the thing. Well, I mean, your investment, all that money, it shouldn't really be any different.
Totally agree.
So,
Bill, I really appreciate your, sharing, from your heart. I try to take, the best of stories, real stories that people share with us, share with me, because again, giving back to a younger generation, our colleagues, peers who are also navigating different aspects of their lives. It's something I think where if the knowledge and the authenticity is shared with enough people, then people can take more action and feel okay about maybe going against the grain or going against the
mm,
default mode that, as you mentioned, just so many people just fall into that trap because, yeah, we're trained to do something with high levels of skill and education and told that, everything else outside that, you should probably just let somebody else take care of it for you. And she stated, no one's going to look after you, your assets, yourself, your family like you are. Yes, have people to advise, learn,
mm.
educate yourself, but you've got to take it on yourself to maintain that sovereignty, in your life going forward.
Agree. I guess the last thing I would say is that it's really important to have these conversations with your spouse
Hmm.
and to have this. I mean, you can't go it alone. Well, you can't go it alone. It's going to be more difficult, I
Yes.
think. You know, to have those conversations because your spouse is going to offer a completely different perspective, which in my younger practice, and I probably thought, I didn't think, oh, well, she's not really in there. And she really offered up some great advice that I just wasn't listening to. And
How many of us have done that very thing? Yeah,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
likewise. No, I know better. Appreciate your help, but
yeah,
let me just bulldoze
right.
forward, right? No, I appreciate
Yeah,
you saying that because we've all done that. Yes.
yeah, absolutely. So, consult your other better half. They say better half for a reason. And it's absolutely true that you are doing it together. And I think that's something that's just vitally important.
Yeah. No, well said. Well said. All right. Well, Bill, thanks so much for your time today. Again, appreciate your sharing very much, and wish you and Robin and your expanding family all the best going forward. I know you'll all do well.
You bet. Thanks, David.
Dr. Jordan and his wife Robin are members of the Freedom Founders community. Our community is one that's a collaborative community of very like-minded and similar caliber professional practice owners, primarily dentists, physicians, And when I say like-minded, they're all seeking more scalability in their time options, flexibility, alternatives to the traditional model Wall Street. Not to take you away from Wall Street, but to show how a stabilization and diversification into alternative investments, which is typically not on the table for most hardworking, high-income professionals. It's just not what we do, not what we're told we can do, and Wall Street's supposed to just take care of it for us. Being a part of a community that really looks and dissects and discerns the types of alternative investments that can better hedge and provide that diversification for one's financial future is what provides the peace of mind, removes stress, and oftentimes speeds up the opportunity for our members to actually create that freedom, not necessarily all the way to retirement, unless that's on their model, but to create that time freedom when they're younger in career, building that pathway, having the certainty and the measurable milestones that allow them to see that they're going to be fine, and taking away the volatility of the traditional marketplace, which has highs and then has lows and causes people to have to retract and rebuild, sometimes losing as many as 6, 10, or 12 years in one's life cycle. The diversification into alternatives is an area that most professionals don't have any expertise, but this is one area that I believe a more active involvement is on the forefront because of where we are in the market cycles. In my conversations with many doctors and dentists who, again, are seeking a different pathway, a pathway with more certainty, a pathway that they feel like they can actually understand and be a part of, not necessarily actively managing real estate or actively managing different portfolios, but being involved in their portfolio allocation. When I talk to doctors about the model they're in right now, which is, again, traditionally the Wall Street model, tax brokerage accounts, annuities, or qualified accounts into 401ks, defined benefit plans, they know that that's not enough. And particularly when we are in an asymmetric risk position like we are in the economy right now with the market in a bubble, diversifying and providing hedge strategies into different alternative investments can be the aspect that gives them the ability to ascertain what's going to work for them and do it in a community where they're like-minded people. Again, dissecting and looking at the different opportunities together as a community rather than trying to do it solo. Many people chase ROI, chase that return on investment. They want the higher yield. They believe that all stocks should go up. They believe that they are late to the train and jump onto many of the speculative investments like cryptocurrency or tech stocks too late in the game. Same thing can happen in real estate. And if you don't know where you can hedge in these different marketplaces and better secure a preservation of capital while still hedging against inflation, it could be a dicey move going into the economy of the decades ahead. It's going to be a different model. I always say to people who ask me, you've got to take a more active involvement in your finances. You've done it with your business. You've done it with your practice. It's time to do it with your money because that's where the real inflection point comes from. You can make money, but when you want your money to work for you, that's where most people don't have any idea where to start, where to begin. And there's a way to do it that can make it very feasible for anybody who has a commitment to their financial future. Most spend their lives optimizing for wealth, net worth, and quantity, thinking them the accurate measuring sticks for success or the magical portals into the lives they want. I believe most people are optimizing for the wrong thing. Time is the greatest resource, and time is what we all want more of in the end. But it's not just about the quantity of time, it's about how you spend it. How you spend your time is the most accurate measuring stick of the success of your life. So, how can you optimize your life, business, and decisions for more time? And how can you upgrade where you spend your time to improve quality and the satisfaction of life? My new book, Scaling Time versus Wealth, lays the groundwork for these questions and provides the lens through which you can filter your decisions to optimize for time and how you spend it. You can get your free copy at scalingtimeversuswealth.com. That's scalingtimeversuswealth.com. And thanks for tuning in. Be sure to click that subscribe or follow button and let us know what you want to hear more of in the future. I'll see you next time.